In this video, we're going to learn about the daily lives of the San Ramon natives, what they ate, where they slept, and how they celebrated nature with dancing. Now you say tribes? Well, what are tribes? They're small villages of people. That's how the native California Indians lived. They only lived in groupings of maybe 100 people. We're also going to see how they turned acorns into breakfast mush. Sound tasty? Let's watch.
No one knows exactly when the Native Americans came to this area, or where they even came from. But we do know that they arrived here almost 5,000 years ago. 5,000 years! Think about it. English-speaking people have only been in America for around 300 years. The natives were here long before you and me. In the San Ramon Valley, there were three main tribes. In the valley of Danville and Alamo, the Totkin tribe lived. They spoke Miwok. South of here in Dublin, the Sunan tribe lived, and to the east near the Doherty Hills, the Siouan. Both of these tribes spoke Ohlone. We're going to learn more about the Ohlone in a bit. In fact, we're going to visit the Ohlone Gathering at Coyote Hills Regional Park in Fremont. Various Ohlone tribes participate in this showcase that involves singing, dancing, basket weaving, and tool making. So why did the natives come to the San Ramon Valley? First and foremost were the area's natural resources. Natural resources are materials that occur in nature and are essential or useful to humans. The San Ramon Valley was an ideal location for the natives because of its freshwater creeks and warm weather. The tribes in this area were hunters and gatherers. That means they couldn't go to the supermarket or to a restaurant to eat. They had to find and then prepare all the food they ate. And there were no microwaves or ovens. So how did they do it? Oftentimes, the men of the tribe, when they reached a certain age, would go out as a group to hunt wildlife. In this area, the main animals to hunt were deer and the tule elk. Using spears and bows and arrows, a group might form a circle around a deer and close in on it until it was trapped and couldn't escape. The arrows were topped with an arrowhead made of a strong rock called obsidian. Obsidian is a volcanic rock, which means it's formed when volcanoes erupt and then the ground cools down. It's very strong, and the natives would sharpen it so that it could kill an animal. Another trick hunters used was to wear a deer head as a mask and sneak into a herd of animals, pretending to be one of them until they could attack with the spear. Let's take a closer look at the art of flint knapping, which is the process of taking volcanic rock and shaping it into an arrowhead or the sharp edge of a spear. The volcanic rock is encased in chalk, and the first part of this process involves removing a chunk that will eventually become a small weapon.
Take a thin flake off, I will hit it at this angle and hopefully knock off a thin piece. Okay, there. Finally, it did it. And that's the piece that I took off. And in order to make something really nice looking out of this, the next step would be to remove the chalky layer from the outside. There. That's what I was trying to do.
Flint knapping is a slow process, and patience, as well as safety, is required. Once the chalky layer has been removed, the volcanic rock is revealed, and new tools are introduced in order to whittle the rock into shape.
I'll start by getting rid of the sharp edge and making it considerably smaller. And I do that by crunching on it with this rough, gritty piece of stone.
The stone is also used to dull the edges, so that the next tool, a deer antler, can chip away at the sides.
And using the strength mainly in my legs, I'll push.
The deer antler really helps the flint keeper to flatten the volcanic rock.
Now I've got a piece that's reasonably flat, and I can start shaping it into arrowhead shape. This was a job that was probably done by older men in Stone Age times. And remember, it wasn't just Native Americans who made stone arrow points. No matter where your ancestors came from, whether it was Europe or Africa or North America or South America, your ancestors were living in the Stone Age a long, long time ago. So when you learn about these activities, you're learning about your own ancestors.
Though the process can be long, the arrowhead begins to take shape.
This is going to become the base of the point, and this will be the tip.
What was once a rock covered in chalk has now become a weapon for a Native American. This arrowhead will be shaped to a very sharp point and then placed on the end of a stick to become an arrow. The arrowheads are small, no wider than an inch, and they're very sharp. In addition to hunting, the natives gathered food from their surroundings and put them into baskets. This is a burden basket and was worn on the back to make it easier to carry. The most important food that was gathered was the acorn. Acorns come from oak trees, and we have a lot of those around here. The women of the tribe would prepare the acorns to eat by using a mortar and a pestle. Let's go back to the Ohlone gathering at Coyote Hills Regional Park to see a demonstration of how acorns were turned into mush. In order to make acorn mush, first the seed had to be removed from its hard case. It was then placed in a basket and tossed into the air in an effort to remove the skin of the seed. The skin had to be removed because it was very bitter. If left on, the mush would not be edible. If the skin still remained, an obsidian knife, made of the same material as our arrowheads, would be used to remove the rest of the skin, and then it would be put into the mortar.
They would always pound their acorn, and it's not grinding because they didn't grind because they would grind the rock. So what they did was pound it, and they would get it after it's nice and pounded. They would take it and put it into the sifting basket. Then they would take and they would tap the basket to loosen what needs to be pounded some more. And then they would dump whatever came out. And what stayed on the basket was the final powder that they used to make their acorn with. So they would take that.
And it would be put through a process called leaching, where they would run water over the flour several times. By doing this, they would leach, or take out, most of the bitter taste of the acorn. Then it was ready to be cooked. The flour was put into a basket where more water was added, creating a thin, soupy mixture.
This is a basket made in Africa, but it still is perfectly good for a cooking basket. Cooking baskets in the old-time California Indian style, and it's different in different areas, are still being woven, but not as often because they can take 400 to 600 hours to make.
Now the acorn mixture has become a paste, but it's still not ready to eat. More water is added until the mixture is ready to be cooked. While this is happening, volcanic rocks have been sitting in a fire for almost an hour, getting really hot. These stones were used for their strength in the fire. They wouldn't explode. These stones are then removed, dipped into cool water to remove any ashes, then placed into the acorn mixture where it immediately begins to bubble and cook.
So at least they have enough heat in them.
It's got my earthy smell to it today. It smells good.
This process is repeated several times, with more rocks added to the mixture. Modern Ohlones use spoons and other modern utensils, but back in the past, San Ramon Valley natives would have used a loop stick to stir the hot rock. The mixture gets thicker and thicker, like a hot oatmeal. There's no fire underneath the basket. Everything's happening inside due to the high temperatures of the rocks. Once the mixture is thick enough, the rocks are removed. And what's left is a hearty meal. Coyote Hills Regional Park also has a reproduction of a village site. Although these aren't the original dwellings, this is what they might have looked like 2,000 years ago in the San Ramon Valley. Their homes were shelters in the shape of a dome. Long willow branches were used for the frames, with an opening at the top for smoke to escape. There was also an opening on the side for their front door. To fill in the walls, the natives used a strong plant called tule, which grows in creeks. The tule was gathered and bound tightly into bundles using rope. These bundles would then be used to fill in the walls of the domed house. Tule was also strong enough to build boats with. The sweat house was another familiar structure in the village. A sweat house is like a sauna. Only men were allowed in. They would seal it up and pour water onto hot rocks to create a lot of steam. The men would use the sweat house before going on a big hunt. This dwelling was called a pit house, a type of house where the affluent families might live. Personal belongings were stored in baskets that hung from the rafters. The roofs were covered with soil. The storage of food and other necessities was also provided by baskets. The baskets were usually made by the women of the tribe. Here are some examples of different baskets. There were no clothing stores back then, not even cotton. So what did they wear? The weather in the valley was so warm, they would mostly make clothes out of animal skins. This animal skin pouch would have been used to hold bows and arrows. If there's one thing you should have learned by now, it's that, well, everything the natives had came directly from nature. Here's some more examples of how tribal life was shaped by their natural surroundings. Music was a big part of tribal life. Branches from trees were used to make flutes.
And you take a tool like this, and you start twisting it, and as you twist, you push a little bit. Okay, and you keep going until you can get the screwdriver either all the way through.
Once the inner part of the stick was removed, holes would be added, and an instrument was born. Tribe members of all ages could take part in the flute making. When it came to medicine, the natives learned from the plants how to heal themselves.
And then the mugwort, it's got like a chicken foot shape to it.
This branch comes from the willow tree, and if you take just a small section of it, scrape off the bark, and then chew on the bark for 20 minutes, you can get rid of a headache. But how did the natives figure this out?
A lot of them have learned about these plants from watching animals.
Did she say animals? That's right. When young deer are first getting their antlers, it's like when your teeth are coming in. It hurts.
The deer, when they're coming into their velvet, they're getting those little antlers. It's like a child cutting a tooth. I guess it hurts. And so they take their little antlers and they scrape it, and you can actually see from a distance which trees are willows, not by the leaves, but by all the bark that's scratched off of them, because they learn that this is a medicinal plant, that this has, a pain-relieving effect. And so that's where the Native Americans learned it. They tried the bark and they thought, hey, this works. It gets rid of pain. So
this nut, the size of an acorn, comes from the bay tree and was used as an energy source. When roasted in a fire, it gave the men energy to go on a long hunt.
We'll do it again. You start out by scraping the outer bark and loosening it.
String was made from dried out sticks of a plant called dogbane.
work your way up to the top while kind of rolling it here. So then you just start at the bottom.
Basically, it's hollow.
Crack. Yeah, it's a little bit. It's hollow in the middle. So you open it out like this, and you're going to see four divisions.
Once it's divided into 4 strips, the outer bark is removed to reveal the fiber, which can now be twisted together with other fibers to create a strong, durable string.
But it essentially kind of goes up and down your leg and comes out twined like that.
The Native Americans' relationship to the earth and all that it provided was also a foundation for its spiritual practices. This relationship to the earth is also the foundation of their religion. Today, people generally go to churches to express their faith, but back then, nature itself was their church. Instead of a suit and tie, their religious clothing reflected what they saw in nature. A religious ceremony for the tribe might involve wearing a feathered headdress, or they might decorate their bodies with feathers, paints, and shells, and celebrate events like harvests or acorn collecting. At the Ohlone gathering, the Costanoan Rumsen Carmel tribe demonstrates how their dances are a part of their religion. Singing and dancing were forms of prayer, performed to ensure the health and well-being of the tribe. Often, neighboring groups would gather together for something called Big Times, which included ceremonial feasting and dancing that would last for a week. This final dance is offered as a prayer to the ocean spirit to honor its role in our lives and an acknowledgement that we need to keep our waters protected and unpolluted.
Shania,